Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this meditation and mindfulness session from the Freer and Sackler Galleries, Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art. We have a really special experience planned for you today in this art-based meditation. As Aparna mentioned to those who joined a few minutes early, we are going to be looking at not just one artwork, but a whole room today, focusing on the Peacock Room, which is one of the most well-known artworks in the museum. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, you'll get to experience it virtually today. We do have Aparna Sadananda joining us as our meditation leader today for the first 30 minutes of the program. And then we will transition into a spotlight talk by curatorial fellow for American art, Carrie Roeder, who has joined us, who'll be sharing some more insights into the Peacock Room and answering your questions in the last part of the program. So I will turn it to Aparna to begin now.
Thank you so much, Grace, for opening up our session today, and welcome everybody to this art-inspired meditation practice. And as I was mentioning before, today's focus of our meditation is not one or two objects, but it's an entire room, which has often been voted as the most popular exhibit in the museum in the past as well. And truly, true to its title, the Peacock Room, Harmony in Blue and Gold, speaks to the harmony not only between the different colors, but also between different cultures. And in our close examining and mindful gazing, I would like to take you into that journey. So before I go ahead and share the pictures and the resources for this room, let's take a moment to check in, and we'll practice like a few minutes of mindfulness, and then we'll just go into that room and enjoy that experience, hopefully. So please allow yourselves to sit comfortably in a way that you can easily look at your screen. It should be as easy as closing your eyes and opening. And you can start maybe by closing your eyes or lowering the gaze. Just taking this first minute of our practice to center our attention by arriving into our presence where we are and just as we are. Let's start by noticing where the body is in that room or space that we're connecting from in this meditation. Notice where the body touches a support, such as the floor, chair, seat, maybe the backrest. And at your own pace, without any rush, invite yourselves to attune the rest of the body. You can compare this visualization to a camera that's at the top of the room, and that's viewing the body from there. Think of your attention like that camera. And now we could go ahead and deepen this connection to our presence in a physical body by bringing awareness to the breath. Let's take a deep inhale through the nose. And we could exhale through the nose or the mouth. You could repeat to yourself silently, I'm here, as you inhale. Now, as you exhale. Breathing in, I'm here. Breathing out now. Let each breath become a gentle reminder that we're here now, attuned to our presence, just as we are. Now let's go on to deepen this connection further by noticing the sensations along the body. So for this part of the meditation, simply bring your awareness, as I mentioned, a part of the body, bring it to that part, notice what's present, and if there are no sensations, we could observe that. Let's start by placing our attention to the hands, to the forearms, elbows, upper arms, the shoulders, the chest, the waist, the upper back, lower back, the hips, the feet, the thighs, the knees, the lower legs, the ankles, the heels, the soles of the feet, tops of the feet, all the 5 toes of the right and the left feet. And let's sweep that attention up the body to the neck, the face, especially the eyes, the forehead and the temples, the entire body. And sometimes in attending to the body's sensations, I feel the urge to make adjustments to our posture, to relax any spaces where we notice some sort of stiffness, anything that keeps us from feeling at ease. So please go ahead and make those adjustments as mindfully as you can. Then, since there will be a lot of gazing at the artwork today, you could also practice a few techniques to relax the eyes. So as we navigate through the Peacock room today, if you feel that the movement of the screen is a little disconcerting or stressful on the eyes, you can always close your eyes, look away from the screen, or lower the gaze. And also you could rub your palms and cup the eyes if your hands are clean enough. You can do that. So these are some options that you could practice when we go into the mindful gazing. So now let's come back to the body just one more time. And let's spend the next 10 deep breaths fully embodying ourselves through this physical body. With our awareness, we're living in this body. And when you feel fully present, you can imagine yourselves transporting from where you are to the door of the Peacock room. And one way to do that is to imagine like the outline of the body is all dissolving into molecules. And then as we open the eyes, we find ourselves at the door, right here where the cursor is. And imagine if you were to enter at this door, what would your eyes see first? You would see this view of the room, the east side with the shutters. Making the name of this room so obvious, we will see this beautiful view of the majestic peacocks overlooking something, and their flowy plumage cascading down. You might also see the symmetrical arrangement of the other two shutters with the motifs of the peacock on either sides. This time, their plumage rising upwards, fully open. This really magnificent display of all the feathers. And we'll also notice that the symmetry is presented even in the two columns of shells to either sides of the central shutter. In terms of the objects placed there, in terms of their shapes in many of the shells. Maybe inviting us to take a closer look at the background in green and blue and gold. And as we get closer to the central shutter, you might notice these textures, the cracks, and the leather paneling on these shutters. And while the peacocks definitely take the center stage in our attention, you might also notice this small mark here. Maybe that inspires a question as to what that could be. We could allow ourselves, we can tell our minds that it's okay to have that curiosity, which we can definitely find answers to in the later part. But for now, let's just notice what are the qualities that gazing at these peacocks invokes within our experience right now. What words come to our mind? If there was a conversation between these two peacocks, what would that be? Then slowly moving, take a closer look at the gilded columns and beams. We might be struck by the beauty, the intricacy of the marks on these beams in gold. The patterns on the plate, on the jar. scenes from life, maybe in China, from where this Kangxi ware could have been from. The bowl. Another jar. To also see if on the other side of the shutter, the objects carry the same designs, maybe. Check by moving across. Now taking a closer look at the objects here. Notice the placement of the mirrors behind some of these objects. You notice this ginger jar with plum blossoms right there. Maybe we could zoom in closer and see if there are more patterns on that jar. Perhaps that allows us to appreciate the crackling sort of an effect in blue behind these plum blossoms. Notice how the presence of this golden beam here and the tone of the blue here are playing with our visual experience. And how does that shift when we include this green in our view? Maybe looking at this lowest panel could offer us some insights into that experience. The combination of the gold, the green, blue. How does the presence of this porcelain object change our perception, change our senses, experience of this room? And we've explored all of that. Slowly move away, zooming out. You can always relax your eyes here. And then if we were to look to the left from the door, to the north wall of this room, you might again see different ceramic and porcelain objects displayed on the shelves. And all of that framing this painting by James McNeill Whistler right here in the center. Painting titled The Princess from the Land of Porcelain by James McNeill Whistler. You can notice the confluence of different cultures in this painting. You can see the central figure here being very European. Then there are elements from Chinese and Japanese culture in the form of this fan and the screen. All of that going on to echo the cultural harmony going across this room, the choice of colors and different objects. Then when we look down at the fireplace, find these golden sunflower andirons. And again, that hint of blue, this mosaic pattern around the fireplace. You notice how all of the objects placed around there is actually adding to the harmony. We can see the peacock feather, these semicircular patterns repeated in the tiles along the lower part of that wall and going all across the room. All the way up to this east side. So when we've explored the north wall, could come back maybe to the doorstep again. Just integrate what we've seen so far. Splendid peacocks on the inner shutters of the east wall, princess from the Land of Porcelain on the north. And then right across the north wall, on the south side wall, we have another beautiful mural. Because, at least from our first view, it seems like these two peacocks are in some sort of a conversation with each other. Maybe taking a closer look will help us decipher what could be the conversation. Let's notice the body language of these two peacocks. The one here on the left, sort of a defensive posture. We can notice that while pretty much most of the, in fact, the entire peacock is painted in gold, there's this small streak of silver here in the crest feather. And then on the other side, the right side, we have this other peacock standing in a position of superiority, perhaps. The chest moved forward. And you can perhaps notice that on its breast, there's a lot of these circular coin-like shapes. These ruffles along the neck. What could this conversation be about? We also notice that this peacock on the right, the coins on the breast, seems to be saying something that the other peacock is listening to. You can also see coin-like objects here. And if we look more to the left, you might see a symbol, like a sign, which we also may remember that we noticed it in the shutters on the east wall. And now slowly, as we move across the west side, the side that we would actually enter this room from, we get a glimpse of this door here. You might see how the patterns on this door are echoed in different elements in the room. These scallop-like shapes, semicircles, resembling the peacock feathers, represented in so many ways across the motifs in the room. And these patterns and these rectangular panels also sort of mirrored in the shelving of this room. We continue to see that same motif harmoniously echoed throughout this west side wall. And not just the walls, but if we were to look up at the ceiling, you can see the patterns, the peacock feather like patterns here. And these lines here funneling down into these lights, ceiling lights. Which if we were to stand directly under these lights, would give us the impression of looking at some floral blossoms maybe. Now, feel free to close your eyes and just integrate all the information about this room that you may have observed in this close looking. Notice how through your mind's attention, you can transport yourselves to this place. Maybe you can even transport yourself in time, imagining what this room would have been when it was initially conceived. And if you find that there's just so much of information, there are a lot of thoughts coming up, know that we can find respite in the space of the mind behind these thoughts. Just like the blue, green, and gold in the background on the leather panels of these walls, quietly bearing witness to the multitude of objects and colors around them. Take a moment to come back to the body. Maybe relax your back, relax your shoulders. You can always seek refuge in the breath. Then bring our attention to the mind. The mind, like the green, gold, and blue backdrop of this peacock room. Each thought like an object in that room. Some very prominent, like the golden peacocks. Some thoughts, luminous, some thoughts, trying to bring in harmony between these other thoughts. And whenever we need a break from these thoughts, we can always attune to the backdrop. It's more uniform. Mm. And alternatively, we can also visualize the thoughts as clouds in the sky of the mind. And whenever we need a moment of calm, we could shift our attention from these clouds to the sky that's quietly holding space for the clouds. As we stay there longer, we might have a sense of that clear space of the sky expanding, the space of the mind expanding. Like now there's more spaciousness. It seems to be a little more relaxing. Just be in that space of silence for a few moments. And when the mind has started to relax, you could visualize all the goodness of the universe flowing into this body, filling up the mind. And all of that elevating our vibration. And in that deeper state of rest and higher vibration, maybe we could ask ourselves how we may find harmony between the world that is inside, this microcosmic self. How may we harmonize this microcosmic self with the macrocosmic self? In other words, how may we align the stories of our lives with the narrative that the universe has for us? May we all find that inner balance that leads us to experience this harmony within and outside. Just like all the colors coming together to create this tonal harmony of the peacock room. With that, let's close our practice by joining our palms in prayer and acknowledging the creative energy of this artist, Whistler, for offering us this beautiful room, and also to all those different forces of the universe that helped us to have this room here in the United States and be able to experience it in person in the museum, but also today virtually. May we also offer the self a namaste and close by sharing a namaste with each other, like we're saying, the light in me honors the light in you. Namaste, and thank you so much for journeying with me into the Peacock Room today. I hope you found this exploration useful, and if you would like to, I want to share that I found this resource through Wayne State University. which is also a collaboration with the Freer Sackler Gallery. And I would like to leave a link in the chat. So if you're interested, you can click on that link and you'll find more of these three-dimensional views to look around the Peacock Room. Once again, thank you so much. Peace be to all. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Aparna. That was beautiful. I wanted to read Julie's comment from the chat. She said how amazing it is to share this spectacular place with so many people at once here today. And also Lisa commented that she was seeing some parts of the room for the first time and that she'd love to be there in person right now. I appreciate those thoughts. And I was also seeing some new things in the room as we were experiencing it this way. So now I'm happy to invite Carrie Roeder, Curatorial Fellow in American Art at the museum, to share some of her insights with us.
Great. Thank you, Grace. All right. And thank you, Aparna. That was fantastic. It was such a lovely way to see so many details of the room. It's a perfect way to start thinking about this room in terms of this idea of harmony, because that is the title that Whistler gave to the room. And that, tells us right from the start that Whistler really saw this room as a work of art. He titled it, he signed it, and we'll be looking at some of those signatures very, very soon. But at the same time, just to kind of give a little bit of the sort of complex history of this space, it's an environment that embodies these dualities, because it was, on the one hand, it's conceived as this harmony in blue and gold, but it was also a space of conflict between the artist and his patron. And this discord between them is recorded and embodied in the walls of the room itself, which Aparna very delicately alluded to when she showed us the details of the dueling peacocks on the far wall. But I loved Aparna's discussion of these various details, all of the different elements that kind of create this space, from the ginger jar on the shelves, the blue and white kangxi ware, to the sunflower andirons that she mentioned that were designed by Thomas Jekyll, who was the architect who initially designed this space before Whistler painted it. There was a gentleman, an architect named Thomas Jekyll, who created the woodwork, the framing, the paneling that you see here. And so all of these details kind of point to this idea of an aesthetic interior. And this was a philosophy that Whistler embraced, that art is all around us and that we should constantly surround ourselves in beauty. And this was a rejection of kind of the Victorian industrialization that he and many were witnessing at this time. You think of people like William Morris, for instance. This rejection of kind of mass production and a move towards, these crafted interiors that was kind of trying to do away with the distinctions between fine art and decorative art, for instance. So the idea that the beautiful could be expressed on every surface of the space, from floor to ceiling, you see this craftsmanship and these painted details. So in this sense, the room was really kind of a manifesto for this idea of harmony and beauty and aestheticism. And we see the pride that Whistler took in every aspect of the room in this signature, the butterfly monogram that you see here. Let's see if we can get even closer. So it almost looks kind of like the reverse of a stamp. So imagine the negative space there as being a butterfly with antenna. So there's one of his signatures. He signs the room in several places. The other Aparna also pointed out right here, and you can see the butterfly in a little bit more detail there. So, all of this indicated that he saw the entire room was a work of art in itself. It was an immersive space. But, and this is where the conflict kind of enters in, this was all done without the owner of the room's consent. And that would be the industrial British shipping magnate, Frederick Leyland, who was Whistler's primary patron at the time. And prior to Whistler painting this room, they actually had a wonderful relationship. And when his architect Thomas Jekyll had to kind of abandon the project pretty abruptly, Leyland had asked Whistler if he would consult on just the decoration of the color of the shutters that you see here, the 3 shutters, and also the color of the door to the room. So this was a minor kind of commission, which Whistler then kind of, was inspired in part because his own painting hung in the room. He was inspired to redo the entire room to this, he was kind of possessed by this idea of creating this entire work, this entire room inspired by this one artwork. So he painted over the entire room and then demanded a steep fee from his patron, which was rejected. And this really sort of broke their relationship, unfortunately. And there was quite a dispute. Whistler was eventually paid, but there was a lot of kind of negotiating and difficulty over this payment. And it inspired Whistler to make an addition to the room, this mural here, which was originally going to be paintings of members of Leyland's family. And instead, because Whistler had access to this space, he created a mural of depicting these 2 peacocks kind of standing off in conflict with one another. And he named the mural. So the whole room has one name, but then he specifically names this mural Art and Money, or the Story of the Room. And so here, on the one hand, we have harmony, but on the other hand, we have conflict. And it's a conflict over money and aesthetic ideals. And obviously, Whistler is seeing himself as the injured party here. And he is this peacock on the left that's more kind of demure. And we can readily identify Whistler was known for having a streak of white in his hair. And so this peacock has this silver kind of crown feather. He also, if you get up really close, you can see there's this paste gemstone here, a green gemstone that for his eye. Whereas the other peacock representing Leyland has kind of a sparkly, almost diamond looking, it's not a real diamond, but it looks closely like one over here. And they are pairing off. And in this detail, you can see as well, one of the sources of the dispute over the room was that Whistler painted over these antique leather wall hangings that Leyland had agreed to be hung in the room. And here with this detail, you can kind of see the texture, the pebble texture of the embossed leather that is behind this painted surface. So this, and as Aparna mentioned, there are these in Leyland. So the peacock, who's the aggressor, is supposed to be the patron, and his breast is decorated with gold and silver. The silver is a little bit not quite as clear in this exposure, but there's gold and silver painted coins decorating his breast. So sort of a reference to the fact that this this room was that Whistler saw Leyland's greed and his preoccupation with money as being kind of the center of this dispute. And of course, he's viewing it through his own very distinctive prism here. But I realize that we're already at 12:45, and I want to make sure that I answer any questions that have come up as in the chat. So let me stop there, and maybe Grace can let me know if there's any questions that I can answer.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing all of that with us. For those of you who aren't familiar, this was originally a dining room, and it was in the home of Frederick Leyland in London, and then it was purchased by Charles Lang Freer, a Detroit industrialist, and it was actually moved to his home in Detroit, Michigan. And then when he donated both his collection of Asian art, his collection of American art, and this room to the museum, and actually built the Freer Gallery of Art, which opened on the Mall in 1923. So this room has been here as part of the Freer and Sackler collection since it opened. And Carrie really gave us so much interesting background about the art historical context of the room. We had a couple questions come in. Karen asked, what was the original floor like? Do we know in Leyland's home, was it wood, parquet, or something else?
It was a wood parquet floor. We do have some period photographs of the room in London and Kensington, and it had a very large carpet. It had a dining table and chairs. So, obviously we don't have, the wood parquet floor here, unfortunately, but we did recently, or in the last few years, we put a dining room table in the center. So you get that sense of its original context as a dining room when it was in London, though Freer himself did not use it as a dining room.
Thank you. And Cher did also ask about what the original furniture was. So is there anything else you want to share about that?
It was, so Leyland had a lot of Jacobean furniture. So it was this kind of big, heavy, ornately carved, enormous Jacobean dining room table with matching chairs. So it was, it was a very eclectic space in terms of drawing from, all different time periods and cultures and influences. But that was very common with this idea of the aesthetic interior, that you were kind of bringing in all of these elements to create this beautiful space.
Wonderful. Andrew is asking, what are the panels we're looking at now? And I don't know if you mean these, but I assume these are sort of motifs based on a peacock feather pattern. Is that right?
Exactly. And so he was originally inspired. Jekyll designed this door that we see here that has these semicircles up at the top, and Whistler was inspired by Jekyll's glass door and these overlapping semicircles, which in turn he interpreted as sort of a stylized peacock feather. And so you have, these overlapping semicircles here, and the ones that look, where you can almost see kind of the eye of the peacock feather in some of these details down below.
Great. And Helen asks if you can tell us something more about the china, the ceramics here. We have had the room reinstalled in a few different ways with different types of ceramics in the last few years.
Yes. So one way that we are trying to keep this room as a dynamic space and give people reasons to kind of come back and experience it in new ways is by showing the ceramics that would have been on the shelves, both when Freer was, when it was in Detroit, when Freer owned the dining room, and then he displayed ceramics from all different cultures, stonewares. They tended to be in various sort of earthen tones. And that was on display for, about, I think it was I'm drawing it blank now, like 7 years. And now more recently, we are displaying it the way that Leyland, the original owner, installed his dining room. And he had a much more uniform collection of blue and white kanshi ware porcelains. And he had a very large collection, which was dispersed after his death. So what we did was we installed it with our museum's own collection on the wall that you see here, and the wall with the peacock shutters. And then we actually commissioned artisans in Jingdezhen, China, who are currently still creating, shapes and patterns in hand painting porcelains in these same sort of motifs, and we commissioned them to create the wares, the porcelains that you see on this wall and on the far wall. So it's kind of you can have the experience when you're in the room of trying to see if you can tell the difference between the newer commissioned blue and white porcelains and the museum level pieces. So these two, for instance, if you look in the corners, you can see them right next to each other. I will say it's very difficult in a photograph like this to kind of see the distinctions. But if you're in the room and up close, you can see that the newer porcelains are a little bit or more uniform because the clay was all from the same time, whereas the museum quality pieces, there's a little more variation in the cobalt blue, in the quality or the white surface of the ceramics. So you can see those. So it's a reason when we do reopen to come and see it in person and see if you can notice those little differences.
Thank you. We also were receiving a few questions about the shutters. The shutters do open, and we open them usually on the third Thursday of the month in the afternoon. And natural light comes into the room, and it's extremely beautiful. So I hope when we return to the physical space, you'll be able to see that. One of the questions was about what kind of paint was used on the shutters, and how have the colors been preserved so well.
Right. Well, so he used the paint that he used was so for the blue green that you see here, it's a mixture of Prussian blue mixed with green, and then the gilding, it's actually not gold, it's Dutch metal, which is a gold-like substance. So it's not quite true gilding, but it's an artificial gilding called Dutch metal. It was preserved after it was installed here in Washington, D.C. It was preserved in the 1950s. There was a conservation effort, and then there was a much larger, more extensive cleaning that the entire room underwent in the 1990s. And so it hasn't undergone a major conservation effort since the 90s, but it's still in kind of remarkable condition. Wow. Especially given the fact that it sailed across the Atlantic on a ship and went to Detroit before coming to DC. We're pretty lucky it's in as good shape as it is.
Yeah. You mentioned that Whistler painted on, I believe it was leather panels that were on the walls already. Was there any decoration already on the leather?
Yes, there was. So this wall here had a leather panel. All of this background here, all of this was leather, and it was embossed leather with a floral pattern. And honestly, this was where Whistler's problem began. He thought the floral pattern, it had bits of red, yellow, gold, and this was when the woodwork, before Whistler entered into the space, the woodwork was all this natural walnut, but the embossed leather had bits of red, yellow, and gold, and he thought these red flowers really detracted attention from his painting that was over the fireplace. And the red, so he initially began the painting project painting over the red in the flowers. So initially it was on a small scale, but I think this happens with a lot of us when we start a painting project. You do one thing and you realize, oh, I need to do a little bit more. And so he kind of got carried away. So it was initially trying to kind of tone down the decoration on those leather wall hangings that then sort of snowballed into the effort that we see today.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for leading us on this journey through the art historical and aesthetic aspects of the room as well. I wanted to invite everyone back again next week for another art-based meditation session. And I'll let Aparna just say a few closing words for us now.
Thank you, Carrie. That was beautiful and so enlightening. And we hope that really enjoyed this trip to DC and through DC, all across the world, pretty much London, a little bit of China and Detroit. And thank you so much. And please do check out all the resources that our meditation admin has been posting all along the chat. There are these wonderful resources besides, of course, the collections page of our museum. Thank you so much. And we hope that you can all come back and meditate with us on Monday, where we will kickstart another new week with yet another new meditation offering. And thank you so much.